When you start watercoloring, you're going to need a few supplies. The first thing you're going to need is your watercolor palette. The ones we use at Fox River are Prang, and they are oval palettes. So they all look like this, and it'll be the colors of the rainbow in order with black and brown. You're going to need a water cup and a paintbrush. Round tipped paintbrushes work really well for watercolor. And then you're also going to need some paper towel. We're going to be watercoloring our ceramic tiles this time. You can watercolor any kind of bisqueware, which is fired pottery. And we're going to watch and see how it applies, what to do and what not to do. All right, getting started. With watercolor, you're going to want to make sure you use water in your pigments or your water or your palette colors. So we're going to start right now with just using some water with our red. We're going to let that sit in there. Watercolor works by activating a pigment with water. The more water you have, the more diluted or transparent your color will turn out. When you put watercolor on fired clay or bisqueware, it's going to be very porous, which means it's going to suck that color and water up. So you're going to see kind of what that looks like. It's going to fade right into it, and it's almost going to be dry to the touch almost immediately. This means you have little room for error, but you can keep going over those spots to make it darker. And you do have control of where the color is going to be placed, as long as you're using a small enough brush and gentle brush strokes. You're going to be using whatever colors you want to completely paint your bisqueware. You're going to want to make sure that you cover all of the areas of the clay, the sides included. If you want to use the bottom as decoration too, you can do that. You can paint inside. The other thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you don't overlap your colors too much, or it'll turn out to be kind of like a brown. I'm gonna put some water in this blue here and let it sit for a minute. Remember, watercolor needs water to be active, so you have to kind of mix it up. The more water you have, the lighter the color will be. With bisqueware painting, you can always add more layers and make it darker. You can kind of see that in the red right there. Applying the blue, I want to be really careful. So if I don't want to get it into that tiny space down there, I'm going to want to make sure I drag the edge of my brush gently across the surface. If I go crazy fast, it's going to catch and it'll go on the other side. All right, let's say I wanted to do inside of that wing. I have a smaller brush. You can use any color you want. Let's say I want to put purple in there. Remember, I've got to put water in that palette, that color. And then I'm going to be real steady. I'm going to put my tile down if I'm holding it. And I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm just going to carefully paint inside of there. Anywhere your paintbrush touches on the bisqueware, paint will stick to it. Remember, this clay is porous, which means it's going to suck up water. So take your time and apply your color. If you need to tilt it to see, I can see on the back side of this kind of groove that I didn't paint it, you can tilt it. Sometimes holding it on the table gives you a little bit more support as well. You'll notice I put my pinky on the project too, and that's going to make it so my hand doesn't shake. Helps guide it. All right, so that's general painting with watercolor. A few things I want to show you on the other side here. Let's say I wasn't as careful and I'm just going to start painting. I'm going to end up with kind of paint everywhere. For one, it filled up this ladybug spot. It's not very even. I got it all over the sides, got it all over my desk. And then what that's going to do is it's going to create kind of like a mess. You're gonna spread it to areas you don't want. If you end up with watercolor in a spot you do not want, you're gonna find that it is really difficult to remove it. So you can't sit here with water that's just plain water. I can't sit there and try to erase it. There's really nothing I can do. Since the clay is porous, it's going to be really difficult to erase. I can a little bit, but it's going to be difficult to make it go away. The only way to fix that is to go over it with a darker color. So you're gonna wanna have to hide it. So remember, if you're really quick with the paint, it makes it more difficult to get quality craftsmanship. All right, so clean brush strokes, smooth, going slow. If you need to add details like black, I would suggest always last. We can even add in some of your details with a Sharpie instead. When you're working with the watercolors though, a couple of things I want to show you, some tricks. All right, so we've already talked about diluting the color. The more water you add, the more diluted your colors get. But let's say you wanted to mix colors. One of the things we don't want to do is we don't want to mix the colors in these little ink wells or these color palette wells, because it's going to contaminate whichever color we decide to mix in. So what I like to do is I'm going to use this lid up here, the cap, and I'm going to pull up some of that color, and then let's say I wanted to make it bluer, grab a little bit of blue and I'm going to mix that in there, and I can make more of like an aqua. All right, let's say I wanted to make it more lime. Got to add my yellow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put yellow here. You always start with your lightest color first. It's just easier to make it a little darker. And then you can add some of your green. And now you can get a lighter green. This top of the palette is a fantastic place to mix. You can keep the watercolors in there until it's time to go. So let's say you're ready to clean up now. So you have your paper towel or your Kleenex. You're going to want to clean out any colors that you have mixed in that lid, because otherwise when you flip it down, all those colors are going to run into these nice clean color palettes. So you just clean it up. The paper towel will do all the dirty work. Just wipe it and it's good to go. There you go. Let's say you accidentally mix a color inside of there, right? You are going to want to take your watercolor. You're going to add a little bit more water. So take your brush, not your watercolor, take your brush, and then you're gonna roll up your napkin and just kind of let it soak in there. Don't push real hard. And then you're gonna pull this out and you're gonna suck up all that green. You might need to do that one more time. Depends upon how messy that paint well was. And it should come out clean. All right, so that's painting with watercolors and that's how to use them. But now let's say you end up with a paint palette that looks like, oh, this, or this, or this, and it's all messy. Well, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna take a paper towel and wipe this out. You might need to wipe this out. If your colors are gross, do that trick I just taught you. I can see that red one has a little bit of purple, it looks like, in there. So you mix that up. Use your paper towel, soak up that mixed color, and now you have a nice clean color palette. You're gonna wanna clean out your tray so you have a place to work. If you notice that you don't have a color, a lot of the blues go quickly. So these are really cool because you can actually pop out these trays underneath. And then if you flip it over, you can pop the little oval colored disc out, and then we have replacements. So you can just snap that in, and then this just goes right back into the case. All right, this one's really messy. So that's how you would be replacing the colors if you needed it. All right. Lastly, cleaning up. You're gonna wanna make sure that you rinse your brushes out. Okay. You're gonna dump out your water cup and you're going to, again, make sure that the top of your paint palette is completely cleaned out. This is a great looking paint palette. If you have a lot of water in your colors, you could take your napkin and kind of suck out some of that. But if it's just a little bit like this, it's okay as long as you don't tip it upside down. Close it, and you're gonna put all of the materials back in the designated place where you got it from. All right, happy watercoloring.